Yanis, you can have more than one word here. I'm permitting you carte blanche to tell me what's wrong with Barcelona and why have they only won one of the last 6 in La Liga?
I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with Barcelona, other than the fact that they are Barcelona, and we seem to think that they have to win everything, win La Liga or win Champions League, regardless of who they are. And
they should beat Leganés at home, though.
What's that?
They should beat Leganés at home, though.
Yeah, they should. But I'll tell you, Mark, you have a team, and I'm going to read you names of players who are anywhere between 17 and 21 and 22. Cubarsí, Ford, Balde, Casado, Marc Bernal, who's kind of injured and could play. Gavi, Pedri, Lopez, Pablo Torre, Yamal. You don't think that players like that can go through the season where it's up and downs because they're just young and they're learning? I look at Cubarsí, who was outstanding in the beginning of the season. He's playing the price a little bit for inexperience. Some may call it stupidity. Dortmund, that's not La Liga, but Dortmund pushing players in the back, penalties, big mistakes, which happen to very experienced players. So I look at this team. I look at the injuries they had, even to those young players. I didn't even mention Ansu Fati, right? We continuously look at that team who's on an average 18, 19 years old. I don't know. I'm making that up, but probably not far away, right? For the most part, a couple of veterans in there who had a tremendous start, who still are capable, and that's important, by the way, knowing that you can go to the Bernabeu and win 4-0, right? But yes, in between, you're going to have moments like that where, last 4 or 5 games in La Liga are not looking great. But I truly, I can only explain it that way because they are so young, and the expectations because the start of the season. And unfortunately, I think that win at the Bernabeu makes us think that, hey, this is the greatest Barcelona. This is Pep's Barcelona.
Maybe. Same question, LME.
Yeah, I think Janusz actually said a few factors what's going on, even though it began with saying there's nothing wrong. There is a few things wrong right now, which are actually the strengths of Barcelona, but they turn into weaknesses as the season begins. I have 3 points. One, as Janusz said, to me, youth. They're the youngest team in La Liga, and that is a strength, obviously, specifically at the beginning of the season, specifically with Barcelona because they have such a great academy, right? But it can also be a weakness because you're asking so much out of a young squad, out of a team that's trying to win La Liga, do well in the Champions League, etc. So consistency can be tricky for a young team. That's one. Number 2, their issue is also their system, which is also their strength early in the season. Because they're so intense and a little bit more direct than the usual Barcelona systems that we know. And at the same time, they press higher with a high line. Their back 4 literally lives on the halfway line, right? The Clásico was a perfect example. But because of this system, now some teams are figuring that out. I recommend everybody to read our colleague Sam Marsden's piece on this on ESPN. It's wonderful because he interviews, alongside the team at Barcelona, interviews players and managers who have faced them specifically for this. So they're figuring that intensity out. So that's the second thing. 3, and this is a key one for me, and Hansi Flick said it himself, is he's beginning to see a disconnect between defense and attack, meaning that when that intensity is gone, right, and they lose the ball in possession and whatever, they kind of struggle to come back, meaning that opponents can now really catch them out. And as a result of that, the pressing is not as intense, etc. Now, I think that this happens to all the good teams, and they go through stages throughout the season. But I see right now, that's the problem. Those 3 things are a problem for Barcelona. I think that, as we get closer to January, they'll be able to revitalize themselves. Injuries are obviously a key. Lamine Yamal is out for the weekend, etc. The youth is a problem. But I think they're going to figure it out. The problem, though, is that more teams are figuring it out. And now you have Real Madrid, who with all these issues are catching up. And of course, their opponents this weekend, Atletico Madrid, who have won 11 matches in all competitions, straight matches. So there are teams figuring this situation right now. So these issues are solvable. It's just that that's what's happening right now with Barcelona.
Solvable, yes and no, because the biggest issue in this situation for me, and it's self-inflicted, it's the inability to strengthen that team in such a way where you can be a little bit further ahead with 1 or 2 signings, right? And I don't, I mean, experience comes to mind right away, but that disconnect between attack and defense is simply, I mean, and I don't want to go back, but it is important, right? Because we see Manchester City struggling without Rodri. Remember in the years past, you had Busquets. Okay, you had experience like who Puyol was back there, Pique, right? You can't change that. And okay, I think Casado, there's something to him. I like him a lot, but I mean, he's not at that level just yet. Pedri is certainly not holding midfield. I mean, he plays 4-2-3-1, but as we all know, he's much more comfortable further forward. Gavi was, remember before the injury, he was playing that position, but that's also not the position. And I don't even want to go to Frankie de Jong, because as much as I love him, I just wonder about him, right? I mean, it's, that something's there, but you can't see it because he's injured. He's also not the type of player, even though he can play in a deeper position, that you kind of compare to some of the names that I've mentioned as well. So it's so difficult for them to surround these players in key positions. And as I've mentioned, Manchester City and many, many others, in order to be the Barcelona of the best, fighting for the highest honors, you sort of have to have these players, and you can't even go out there and get them.
As someone who has, maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I do, because I commentate on them quite a little bit of a soft spot for Atletico Madrid. They deserve some love here because they've won their last 11 in all competitions. One thing that Diego SImeone has never done as Atleti coach is won away from home at Barcelona in La Liga. You have to go back to February 2006. Fernando Torres scored twice in a 3-1 win at the Camp Nou. But they go in form and they'll not be frightened. So what type of opposition, LME, does Atleti provide for Barcelona this weekend?
Yeah, MD, I'm really glad you started with saying that you have a soft spot for them. Because out of any manager in Europe, I'm going to be honest, I don't think I have more respect than for Diego SImeone and what he's done in 13 years there. Since he arrived, Atleti, aside from last season, and because Girona was an anomaly, aside from last season, every single season, he's never led them to lower than third. He's won La Liga twice. This is a remarkable...
Fourth last season, but prior to that,
yeah,
yes.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Aside from last season, which was an anomaly because of Girona, every other season, he's led them to third. Last season was fourth. Regardless of that, and competing with the financial power of Real Madrid and even Barcelona, because during the Messi days, of course, the global appearance, this to me says so much about who he is, right? It's remarkable. And specifically talking about this game, they are absolutely on fire, and deservedly so, because when you look at this team, and they spent a lot this summer, it's the first time in a long time they spent a lot, but you look at this team and there's a great balance. There's Pablo Barrios, the young Spanish midfielder, who just got a call-up for the national team. He's next to Messi's bodyguard and Rodri de Paul. That's a great balance of creativity and strength. Then you go up front. Julian Alvarez, I've said over and over again how it was a mistake for Man City to let him go. It took him a little time to get adjusted to the Atleti system, but now he's creative, he's scoring goals. He's next to Antoine Griezmann, who, in my opinion, is still an underrated player when we talk about the greatest in the modern game. He is remarkable, and he's doing so many good things right now, especially now that he's returned to Atleti. And then you got at the back, Jose Maria Jimenez, who's just like an absolute warrior for Atleti. So there's so much balance all over. Now, defensively, they've only conceded 11 goals, the same as Real Sociedad, that's the best in the league, etc. So they come in to Barcelona with a great sense of optimism that, as you mentioned, Diego SImeone can maybe get this win finally at Barcelona. Now, it's going to be tricky, but I think there's a legitimate chance for him to do so. Regardless of all of that, it's remarkable what Atleti are doing. It's always a problem towards the end of the season because his system demands so much, right? But I'm with you. I have a soft spot for them. I love that garra. I love that, determination. And, as a neutral, I want Atleti to go there and win, to be honest, because I really think they're showing a lot of heart right now.